It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Most of these behaviors are reactionary instead of pre-planning ahead. And let's give you some examples. Let's go ahead and talk about what is doing too much.
Yeah, when we say doing too much, most often what we're talking about are folks who struggle with overconfidence bias. And again, whenever we use vocabulary that we think you guys would want to know the definition behind, full-time equivalent Daniel comes through in the clutch for us. And this is what overconfidence bias is. It's the tendency of people to overestimate their own talents, their own skills, their own abilities. These are the folks who say, you know what? I figured out how the market works. I know how to invest. I know what I need to go buy or sell or fill in the blank.
Well, we've done this ourselves, but
yeah.
And this is that's a fancy word, overconfidence bias. But there are times all investors come together, and for you and I, you were getting your CFA.
Yep.
And I had a little extra jingle in my pocket.
Sure.
Felt like we ought to do something with that, so we bought some options on Apple. This was years ago.
Yeah, and the absolute worst possible thing happened when we did that.
We made money on our first
We
trade.
made money. We were successful the very first time we tried.
The worst thing happened with these type of investment things is to make money on your first trade, because that, of course, increases that overconfidence bias that we're talking about. So in addition to buying Apple options, we bought more Apple options.
Yep.
Pushed the date out a little bit later. And then we also bet against Netflix.
That's right.
Because we just knew it was overpriced at the time.
We thought the valuation was way too high. There's no way it was sustainable. This is, a decade ago now. And here's what's really frustrating. We were right.
Yeah.
We were right.
Actually, I think it was probably 2 weeks after the puts
Expired
on us. The stock went for the largest drop. Everybody now knows Netflix is successful, but it went from 200 or 300 down to 42 right after
like
our
a few
options.
weeks after
we would have made a fortune off of
Absolutely.
that trade. But so that's the thing, is you can have a confidence and be completely wrong. That's one side of it, and it's really tied into one side of we talk about the roller coaster ride or the cycle of market emotions. And we put this slide, you're going to see this a few times here, is because what happens here with overconfidence bias is it's focusing on one part of that cart ride.
That's exactly right. We're focusing on the optimism, the excitement, the thrill, the euphoria of investing, and we experienced that. As soon as our Apple options, I want to say they like doubled or tripled in value, we were like, oh my goodness, we figured it out. We've cracked the code. We're going to be, gigantically rich. And I think a lot of people fall into that category. They start either having some success or they start thinking, man, I was at a cocktail party and so told me how they made all this money on this, penny stock, and I got to go buy it. That's probably not the way you want to approach making investment or financial decisions.
Well, and also I want to throw some cold water in the fact that what is the most simple adage you hear about investing is that you want to buy low, sell high. Well, we also hear markets keep going higher and higher. How in the world can you buy low when markets are reaching all-time highs?
Yeah, that's a common question we get all the time from folks saying, hey, maybe we should just wait this thing out. I feel like the market's a little overpriced right now. I feel like it's a little high. And we always say, whenever someone says that, we pull out a great quote from Nick Murray. And this is what his quote says. If you think the market's too high, wait till you see it 20 years from now. Because you talk about it all the time, Brian. When you're investing, it's like a yo-yo going up and down. But it's a yo-yo going up and down, up a mountain. So even though there's these undulations, you're moving to higher and higher and higher levels. I think where people get caught is where they try to catch the very top of the yo-yo or the very bottom of the yo-yo instead of focusing on moving to higher and higher ground.
So probably a good coping mechanism, if you're worried about this type of stuff, besides the timing of it, is diversification.
Absolutely.
So if you're thinking about diversification as at least as a tool that will help you with some of these behavioral issues, how about chasing the hot dot?
Yeah, this is another one, Brian. And I want to give you credit because I learned this from you. When I first came out, of my investing courses and I was working with you, you showed me this illustration. It was something I'd never seen before. And you had told me about your experience coming out in the late 90s. Folks were so excited. If anything had the word .com in it or internet in it, You were a fool if you weren't investing in that. If you were just buying the boring old S&P, you were missing out. And this is the illustration that you showed me back over a decade ago.
Well, yeah,
and I
because,
still think it's pertinent today.
well, prudent investing looked like you were a fool in the 90s.
That's
now,
right.
look, we're so old, they don't show the 90s anymore. It
starts
actually
at
starts in
2000.
2000. But what I always told everybody is because it wasn't uncommon that in like 98, 99, you could have the S&P 500 making 28%.
Sure.
Now, everybody here listening to this, you're hearing 28%. You're like,
Sign me up. I'll take that.
And you know what? Your clients were still upset with you because the information and technology funds and anything that was technology based, if you were making 28% with the S&P 500, they were making 50 to 100%. So you still looked like a dog in your client's eyes. And that's the part that I always told people, be careful chasing the hot dot, because what is the best performing asset class this year is not guaranteed. Matter of fact, behaviorally and also historically, you'll see it doesn't stay up there. It typically bounces around, and that's why you do want to spread your risk out.
If you're out there listening on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spotify, the chart we're looking at shows a bunch of different asset classes and how they perform relative to other classes year over year. If you just sort of visually look at this and you just pick a color, like orange is one that sticks out to me, you can see that there are spreads of time, or there are strings of time where orange might be the top performer. But it is not uncommon in the years following those top years that it is the bottom performer. So if you're trying to chase and invest in the best investment of last year, the best thing to do last year, there's a good chance that you're setting yourself up to actually buy high and sell low. And that's why we think diversifying makes all the sense in the world. So if you are entering into the market, even into a really strong bull market, if you have the right diversification in place, you can set yourself up for long-term success.
So that's overconfidence, that's overtrading, that's doing too much. In reality, most reactionary behavior is going to be wrong. That's why you want to pre-plan. But there is one more side I want to talk about, which is we see this on the other side is we'll have somebody reach out to us and they'll be like, I have 6 figures of cash. I'm like, well, is that what your emergency reserves need to be? Nope. And I'm like, well, how do you have, I've had clients have 7 figures of cash or prospects that came to us. And I'm like, how in the world do you end up with 7 figures of cash? And they're like, well, I got scared. I got nervous. I got out. And it just kept going up on me. And
I was waiting for the pullback.
I was waiting for it to come down. And then before I knew it, I somehow had all this cash. And I was just so scared of making a mistake. I was locked into analysis paralysis. So we see this all the time of not doing enough.
Yeah, paralysis by analysis occurs when someone overanalyzes or overthinks a decision to the point of being unable to take any action at all. Rather than doing anything, they sit there and do nothing.
So, and once again, pulling up our cycle of market emotions, this is focusing on the wrong side of it. This is what I think is interesting, and this is what's so cruel about human psychology. When we have overconfidence bias, is actually the tippity top of the markets, and that's the maximum point of financial risk. When markets are the cheapest and best maximum opportunity to buy, we're all scared to death because that's where you have the anxiety, the fear, the desperation, the panic, the capitulation. These are all the things that you should be excited about, but because of our emotions, you actually are locked into, there's no way I would invest right now.
Now, I've heard you say this all the time, Brian. You came up with this idea that you talk about a lot, this 88 times over, that $1 can turn into $88 for a 20-year-old if they're investing by the time they get to 65. And you'll talk to these prospects who have $1 million in cash. They're like, oh, I don't know what to do and I don't want to do. And I've literally heard you say this. You'll say, you've got to do something. You don't need to invest at all. You just need to do something, because if you do nothing, do you know how much your multiplier from an investment perspective is? And the answer is 0. You can have $1 million sitting in cash. But if you have $1 million in cash and you want to know how much it's going to be worth in the future if you don't put it to work for you, 1 million times a 0 multiplier is still going to be 0. It's not going to move anywhere. You're not going to have any of that compounding growth.
It actually is working against you because of inflation and other things.